Hello and welcome to Leagues Behind, the Arena Gauntlet League vodcast, which covers both the history of the Arena Gauntlet League and also the tenets of good league design. And hopefully our discussions here will inform league design moving forward and also help us capture the past of this tournament series, which, has been going on for over a decade now. Many players have been with us for many of those years, and my guest today, my very special guest, is one of those players who's been with us since the days of Zendikar Rising. This will cover his first league. I want you all to please welcome, with both hands, Jeremy Algar. Thank you for joining me.
Thanks for having me, Chris. It's a pleasure. Nice to relive the past.
Well, that's what you've been called upon to do often in John's Hunt the Week podcast, but I'm not going to get you to discuss your old, Pro Tour experiences, your grinding experiences, what it was like to play in Alpha, none of that stuff.
We're downloaded in today.
More recent past is what I'm interested in. And maybe, if you have any thoughts about it, the future. The future.
Sure, be happy to.
Okay. So let's start with describing what Zendikar Rising as a league represented. It was the MH3 of its time. It was the largest league to date that we'd put on with 91 players. It was roughly double the Amonkhet remaster, which came before it. And it was the first time we used Reddit to reach out to a wider audience on the global stage. And you were one of the people who answered the call. Maybe you can tell us about how you came across us and how it felt to discover this little bit of cyberspace.
Yeah, so it was, to set the scene for folks who, I'm assuming we've all lived through it. I don't think we have any 3-year-olds on the server, but, in 2020, pandemic was roaring. It, wasn't a couple of months like we all thought initially. And so in the fall, I was like, man, I really miss playing Magic. It's like Arena is one thing, but Arena is, in its default form, has always been sort of a casino slot machine sort of feel to me. Like I love Magic, but without getting to talk to your opponent and getting to, get to have the personal side of Magic, as I really miss that. And one of the subreddits that I subscribe to, LR Cast, for limited resources, had this post, and it sounded intriguing. And I was like, oh, let me check this out. And, it's on Discord, and at that point I hadn't really used Discord. I think I'd used it for my had a group of friends who played Civilization 6 of all games, and we had our weekly game on Discord. But certainly nothing like this large community, and I'd never done anything like that, being an old tech boomer. So I was like, all right, let's check it out. I'm sure I could figure it out. And it was pretty awesome right from the get-go. It's like, things were a lot rougher on the tech side than they were now, but like compared to playing anything at all, it was still amazing. We had to crack our boosters manually and all the rest. I'm sure we'll get into those details, but from right away I was kind of hooked. That seemed like I'm originally from Toronto, and the kind of center of gravity for the league was Montreal. So, we got that. I had a little friendly rivalry going on that, Toronto-Montreal, right from the start. I loved the community. I loved, all these streamed matches and the chatter, the trash talk. It kind of pulled me in right away. And and then, for the format of the league itself, it's like, okay, 60 cards sealed. That seemed odd. I'm like, all right, I'll roll with it. And I really got to feel how it went with punish packs, and it's like, okay, I'm getting how this is going, and how decks evolve, and really from day one, or day one through end there of starting, it really hooked me and brought me in.
Oh, that's great. Talking about you in Toronto, were you a face-to-face gamer down there?
So I used to play at 401 Games a long time ago, but these days not so much. I've actually moved out to Seattle. I know I sometimes fib on my league application because I don't know, it's an old thing, and maybe Canadians understand of like being born in Canada and being labeled in a large group setting as American, it's like it bristles. And I don't think it's the other way around. It's a little brother, big brother thing where Canadians got that rivalry going with the U.S. You know, it's a friendly one. It's still family, but it's like, no, I want to be labeled as Canada. So I actually moved out to Seattle in 2006. But back in the day, it's because I started Magic in '95. And we won't go into that huge history, but yeah, I used to play at what was then called 401 Convenience and is now called 401 Games. So I'm happy to hear that they're still thriving and running Magic tournaments, because that's where all the big Magic pros used to hang out.
So that's a no. That's a no then to my question.
That is a no. Yes, I can't answer short answers, Chris. You should know this by now.
Well, I asked because I'm trying to sort of link it to where we were as a tournament series at that time. I think this is the last or one of the last tournaments that Face to Face just straight out sponsored and gave money to. So I was hoping to shout them out because they had put at this time this would make about $500 of prize money or prize store credit that they'd put on the line just to keep our little community afloat. So I do have to call them out. And here, where Three Kings Loot, they stop giving promo packs and they start just dumping $2 of store credit in if you survived until week 2. One of the weirdest promos, but I think it was just to put just enough money. You put a toonie in people's store credit accounts to get them to open an account and maybe order a single or two. And so that was the first time that they financially sponsored the league in this very interesting way. And I don't know if that strategy paid off. Maybe Amir's better placed, but we were playing for store credit at this time still. But I think this might have been one of the last really free tournaments. I'm not sure when we started charging the $5 entry fee, because it started as $5. But this is one of the last free ones.
I think this was the last free one, if memory serves. That because there's of course league controversy of charging entry fee.
I know. What?
The end of what is now called AGL. Then was it Arena World Series? I think I was remembering that from listening to one of the earlier shows.
Yeah, at this time we're the Sealed League World Series. And here, like, we're starting to actually sort of reach out. We were always global. I think we always had one or two outside of North America to kind of make it officially still a World Series, or at least some Americans peeking their heads in. I think this is the first one that really had international reach, and our first international winner was Francesco. And we got to talk about Francesco.
What a guy.
Yeah, so amazing. At this time, for some reason, we sort of piqued the interest of some Finns. We got Francesco and Tia on here. They were big players in our very small community early on. And Francesco still putting in the work and putting in the love with Booster Tutor, the bot that we still use to crack packs for our tournament series. So really have to shout him out. And I know that he had a link up to get him a coffee a few days ago, but it's well worth it to just say thanks to this guy, a real legend, and is still on good terms with the league. He just his career took off. He's a busy guy, and so we definitely wish him all the best and want to, congratulate him again for being our first international winner and also being the inventor of the hugely influential and greatly convenient Booster Tutor.
Yeah, what a huge boon that is. I still get to talk to Francesco on occasion because. Actually, for those who don't know, I do the hosting for our bot. So I have some Azure credits being a Microsoft employee. So I figure I might as well put them to a good cause. And so I'm running a server that hosts most of our bots because when Francesco first started it was on some university server, which, whatever server you can find, but it would frequently get like rebooted.
Yeah.
And, had some infrequent, not super frequent, but once in a while it had downtime. And, we are a 24/7 league these days, and so I was able to work with him to get some more stable hosting there, and it's great getting to chat with him. He is an awesome guy, and I love all that he's given for the league, and obviously a great Magic player too. As he took this one down, including beating me in the semifinals. But I'm not bitter; it's okay.
You got there eventually. You got a league win eventually, right?
My dad, yeah, I was a long-time bridesmaid there, but yeah, we took it down in teams later on. For maybe we'll be back for leagues behind Set Wars. Can get the whole crew on there.
Yeah. Also, I don't want to downplay or minimize your contributions either, Jeremy. And thank you
Oh, of course.
for helping make the
No,
bot stable. Because I remember those days when Booster Tutor was on and off, and people were freaking out. Where's my pack? I need to play my next match now. And like ever since you took that over, it's been low
yep,
key crucial to keeping things running smoothly. So again,
totally.
thanks to you, man. Big props.
No problem. Yeah, that's the perfect hosting is when you forget that it's there. So that's a compliment in its own way. No, I'm happy to. I love I have some stuff at my disposal. I might as well chip in for a community that gives enjoyment right back to me.
Well, you chipped in more than one way. You also served on the league committee, and I was wondering if you'd enlighten us on how that came to be, when that came to be. What was the length of your tenure, and any highlights from that time?
Sure. So I don't remember the exact dates. I'd have to look back, but it felt like it was about a year. Um, I had to get more and more involved, and I loved getting in. It's. I think maybe it's you yourself, Chris, have had the saying that the close second most popular pastime on this server is debating about league rules. Next to
Yes.
actually playing it. And people love arguing about how the league could be improved, why this rule isn't fair, and it's I love that it's that open nature where we're throwing these ideas back and forth. And so in early days, I feel like this was my first way that I thought I could give back. It's like, why don't I help out in a more official capacity? And I honestly, with all the awesome stuff that goes on in modern leagues for league design, I feel like a bit of a slouch. It's like, man, we were doing okay back then, but that was never my wheelhouse, was really creative league designs. I like thinking of different tournament structures, and so that's part of what I think drew me in. And I'm trying to think of what was a kind of a notable league from that era, but I don't have any really, really juicy stories from then, other than just trying to help keep things going, trying to work on the tech side where I could. Steve's been awesome there in the current LC. And then the end of the tenure really just came because life with 4 kids and a busy job just got a little bit too much, and I didn't really want to do LC at the end if I couldn't really commit to it. I didn't want to kind of half-ass it, as it were, and so that's really when I stepped down. But I was happy I was able to contribute in that capacity for those early online days.
Yeah.
I want to say it was the bulk of 2021 would have been about the time frame.
Yeah, and I think you obviously you parted on good terms as a gentleman, in good standing with the league committee. You didn't leave under a cloud. You didn't. So I guess that at this time, right? So the time of Zendikar Rising,
Yep.
we're still not being that ambitious with league designs, and I think partly that's because, like Modern Horizons 3 League, we're expecting an influx of new players. So we experimented a little bit
Right.
with trials and challenges and little player incentives with Amaket Remastered, and here we're kind of going back in our shells. We're going back to the secret recipe of League, the 5 steps, and hoping to keep it simple to onboard a whole bunch of new players. So I guess that what might be interesting, if you want to take a stab at it, how would we
Sure.
do Zendikar Rising League today to make it a bit spicier, if we were going to do that?
Yeah, sure. I think the most successful league designs really play off of the set theme itself. That you have the OTJ with Outlaws and the whole Wild West theme, and the league design reflected that kind of Wild West theme. And so I feel like looking back at Zendikar, the number one kind of the mechanic that sticks out the most is really the party. So you got
Yeah.
your cleric, rogue, warrior, wizard, and I think we experimented in this later, but at the time, maybe there is something where there is some reward for kind of like assembling a Voltron of some sort, and so we'd have to think about like what are ways that people could pick up, some out of game thing, and that when you get all four together, some little mini quests. Your deck gets a boon or there's some sort of boon provided when you assemble this virtual party, and maybe it's a team thing. Like it seems like a natural thing there as well. And so that's the one that jumps to mind. I mean, the other one in Zendikar, there was certainly landfall, so there could be a theme there. That doesn't feel as sticky to me. The lands that flip over, the dual-faced card lands, which are now back in MH3, so a little connection to the present. Those are certainly neat cards, but they don't scream to me as a league design component. But maybe that could be if you have a major theme and then some minor themes sprinkled, there could be something where things virtually flip over tables. So yeah, that I'd go somewhere along there. That's the broad strokes.
No,
I'm a big picture guy. Yeah.
I think you're right. But, like the four faction party thing. This could have been easily like the first 4-player team league if we'd sort of like acted on it, but maybe it seemed like a bridge too far since we just moved online. It still seemed like right. We were still finding our feet like a newborn deer, a little shaky.
Yes.
So, but I do think like this, having missed this trick, made it easier for us to pick up. I think for the D&D league, was it that we made the 4 different types of adventurers relevant in some way? I think we did some paths.
I think it was actually there might have been the AFR also, but I think actually Set Wars, the league that I was part of the winning team, actually had where you had to slot into the 4 different party classes. I'm just now remembering this. So I was a warrior, and I had to pick from a set of packs that were aligned to warriors, and it was a different amount of packs based on a little bit of light touch balancing, where you could get more of a set like M21. I think I took SNC, and that was like kind of the bare 6 or 7 packs, and so that it didn't really I liked the overall Set Wars. It didn't really feel necessarily like, yes, we were in a party, but there wasn't a strong like, I'm doing warrior things, other than I think the sets chosen were aligned to the class. So like warrior had a little more sets that had warriors, that sort of thing.
Yeah.
And so yeah, I think the idea I just had, which I thought was novel, actually was carried forward into the first league. But yeah, if we were doing Zendikar over again, I think that would have been a natural fit of hey, let's assemble a party literally, and then maybe some boons for in the virtual realm for that party.
Do you have any tournament specific memories from Zendikar Rising? Because I think back then, I think this may be even pre-official LC days, so I was probably just scrambling trying to do a lot of things at that time. So for me it's a blur, but for you as your first league, you might have some more concrete recollections to share.
I do, and I actually looked over. I dug up the standings document, and so I actually got to look. Well, there was something weird going on for the later matches, but I could see at least the first 2 weeks of matches, and so I actually started this league slowly. I think I actually lost to you in week 1 or week 2. I forget exactly. And like, oh man, this the TO here, he's a shark. I'll never beat him. Narrator. Voiceover here. Anyway, and so I started 5-5, which is, I was like, oh, this isn't going so well, but I'm having a good time. It's fine. And then I just went on a run. So my final record, and I actually sent this to my Padawan in the most recent league, like, hey, in my rookie league, I went 21-9. Top that, buddy. Yeah, it was a little motivator. It was a little nicer than that. And he of course went 21-9 himself. So I from 5-5, I went on a 16-4 run in the final 4 weeks, and just was like winning left and right. I stuck with Zendikar packs. I saved my deck. I usually saved like the final form deck of each league, just as a little nostalgia. And so I have the Zendikar deck in front of me here, and yeah, it was pure Zendikar. And I think looking at the rule document, it was allowed standard And so, like, looking back, I'm like, wow, I didn't take any War of the Spark or anything. That's insane.
Right.
But of course, this is my rookie league. I don't know any of this. It's like I've played War of the Spark, but the strategy of what pack to pick. I think I just took Zendikar because it was the new set, and then I was like, well, I got this party theme because I had a black-white deck with a lot of party mechanic cards. I'm like, well, now that I'm kind of into this, I guess they call it parasitic mechanic, where it's like I can't rely on getting those in the same quantities in other sets, so I'll just stick with Zendikar. It seems to be working, and
Right.
yeah, it was a fun ride. 21-9, number one in the Swiss, and then after the main sealed portion. And so that was great. And then, somewhere toward like week 5, week 6, like, hey, who's this new guy? He seems to be beating everybody. The silent assassin. And then for my first mega draft, I remember it reasonably well. It was a blue-black deck. I didn't yet know the tip of, Gruul seems to win mega drafts all the time. And I played.
Well,
I want to say I played Evan
first.
Yes, I want to say I played Evan first round. I think I'm fairly sure. It may have been Caleb, but so I won my first round, and then I played Francesco in the second round, and his deck was just a machine. I took a game off of him, but I think I felt lucky to do so. He had a blue-red deck. I remember that. And I don't remember what happened to him in the last round. Lost just short of my, winning my rookie league. That would have been a good story, but was having such a good time. It didn't wasn't too many feel bads about that.
What a good sport. That's something that people could learn from your good sportsmanship, Jeremy. But
thank you.
A couple of things came out of your discussion that I wanted to touch on. So this was the first league where we actually started restricting punishment packs to standard sets. Before that, we were like, if it's on Arena, go with it. So this is the first time we did narrow the range of packs. So I think that's interesting to sort of comment on, that even subtly, there are little things changing even when it looks relatively static, right? And I think when you're talking about looking back to find your weekly records, what we used to do, I believe, was to take a screenshot of the spreadsheet and put it up at the end of each week. But then I think it was during this league that Dynamic Standings, Johnny's spreadsheet contribution, happened, and then we stopped posting the weekly results. And I think with Dynamic Standings, you can sort of rewind the clock if you want to download a copy and delete all the matches that were played before a certain date. I think you can still do that, but you got to do it all yourself now. Whereas if you just scroll up, you can see. I think still the early weeks of Zendikar Rising League in static form. But I do think that's where we made the jump into Dynamic Standings, which of course is far superior, right? It's updated in real time. Yeah. Everybody can look and enjoy at any time and see how things are going. So. Yeah, those were a couple things that you mentioned that, for me, they're just kind of invisible, but I think for people playing at the time, they must have seemed, whoa, this is, what convenience, what ease,
No, it's and I think us old timers maybe get, we lose sight of that, but then when the new influx of players we get who are always kind of marvel at wow, things are really well run, automated, got a great setup. But you're right. It took work and growth to get to where we are today. So it's worth appreciating.
I mean, how many people have contributed and cobbled together either tech offerings or rule design suggestions and community management guidelines and so on and so forth. I mean, when you arrived, it was still. I mean. There was a distilled culture, I think, that sort of translated from the in-store days. So I think generally speaking, we treated ourselves well, but maybe it was a bit more rough around the edges because we're getting used to working online, and we're also trapped in our houses because of COVID, and that's never a great thing. So I do feel like maybe we've evolved a bit as a community over time as well.
I totally agree. I also think that, and I know you. I listened on one of the previous episodes of this that you had the kind of vision from the start of this thing having legs online beyond the pandemic. But I felt like when I joined, there was kind of a mixed feeling of some people are well, this is something we're doing online, while the pandemic's going, and then it'll maybe peter out. But and so it's easy to forget nowadays, where it feels so kind of stable and long lasting for every league, that like back then it wasn't clear, at least as a newcomer. It's like, oh, I wonder if if A, I'll be interested in this when the pandemic ends, and B, will it even run? And so there was a little bit of that going on then, and not that was a bad thing, but I think kudos for the vision that this could grow and be something, because you've said before, it's really not something being done anywhere else that I've ever seen, and it's such a unique experience that you have to be like a decathlete of Magic and have all these multiple skill sets, and I love that.
Yeah, so this is maybe where I get to sort of reveal a couple of things, like sort of show my hand a bit. So in store, I was running leagues that were sort of, people tease me for this. I was trying to design what would be the equivalent of the Magic Olympics, right? I was trying to create better, more well-rounded players by testing them with a bunch of different formats. And, the stuff that we could do in paper was relatively limited compared to what we can do online with all the tools at our disposal. So could never really realize, to the extent that we have here and now, the different kinds of tournament offerings that were possible. So I think in my back pocket, I sort of like, I hope this was something that would be sustainable. And I think that I couldn't be too upfront about my intentions or my hopes, because up until Zendikar Rising, they could have easily been dashed, because up until then we have 30 and then 21 and then I think 48 players, and so still very fragile, and still very possible that a community that small can just fall apart. So as soon as we got to Reddit and I started to see, oh well, I mean, we have nearly 100 players in our fourth tournament, I started thinking, well, if we keep doubling every tournament, there's no reason why we couldn't do this sustainably into ad infinitum, if the energy's there and if people want to keep doing it. And happily, people have, despite COVID not being the imminent threat to everyone's lives and livelihoods that it once was. We managed to use our time wisely. I think we capitalized on our time in quarantine. And it took me a while to think of that word, which is a really good thing. I think I've intentionally buried it deep in my mind, so I had to retrieve that word after a couple of seconds. But we used our time wisely, I think, in quarantine, partly because we didn't have a choice, and partly because maybe we thought, well, if we make this good enough, this will be something we can keep doing, right? Because I started to like playing online as much or more than going to the local game store in a way, right? And this is something that, as long as we are, independent in this way online, the store can't take us over like it did in Dubai and kill the league. Because once you put a deep kind of like hand in the tournament series, the store will kill it. I mean, look, I don't want to talk. I'll tell you something, maybe that isn't known. So I'd secured a deal to start a paper league with Magic Stronghold Games here in Vancouver. So I was like, okay, now it's time to start planting the seeds of real world leagues again, in parallel with what we're doing with the AGL. And I basically had the deal, the soft handshake. Yes, we're looking forward to doing this. I think it was Mirza Karlov Manor or something. So it's fairly historically recently. And then I came in the shop a week later and I said, so what are we doing, guys? I haven't heard from you. The store's going to run it. We don't need you. We don't need you to organize this. The store's going to run it. And I'm like,
oh boy.
I'm like, all right. So I'm looking forward to this. I'll join. I'll play your tournament. I'm curious to see what you're going to do, because they had no leagues running when I was since I've been here in Vancouver since I want to say 2021 now, and it never happened. So they didn't want to let somebody else run it in the store. They said they were going to run it and they didn't. So I don't. For me, I'm happy to have something that we run, something that we can, because the stores, store ownership and tournament organizing two different skill sets, two different interests, right?
Yeah.
I want to run interesting tournaments. I want to see people have a lot of fun. It's about the purity and the excitement of league design and play and community and all that stuff. Now, you'd think as a store owner that should also be your priority, but they've got a ton of other things to worry about, and sometimes just their mere survival, right, is what they're concentrating on all the time. The bottom line.
Yep.
Now,
Yep.
we don't have those worries, right? No one's making a living off of league, so it's not like
Right.
If league doesn't happen next year, we will all still have our careers. We will all still be living hopefully well. But for them, I guess I can see like the business imperative. It kind of messes with the fun gameplay. And if you let me to soapbox just 1 minute more, Jeremy.
Oh, sure. Of course.
This is what I don't like. I don't like that stores have such a financial interest in tournament experiences which are disposable, right? So like in-store sealed and in-store draft where you just buy your cards, you play them for a couple hours, and then you either sell them back to the store, you put them in a box, and it's finished. And that's kind of, if I'm honest, what I started to try to avoid with my in-store leagues. I'm like, hey, we can keep playing with these cards. We don't have to make the stores rich. We can just enjoy a longer experience and build a community in the process. So we'll agree to meet each other for 6 weeks or 8 weeks or however long it takes to grind this out. And we'll meet at the store. We'll kind of like make incidental purchases of sleeves. We'll buy punishment packs and stuff. We'll buy enough that we're not a nuisance, but we're not like addicted to draft. We're not addicted to sealed. We're not like junkies just ripping through
Right.
packs like they want you to, right? To buy a box and then sit there and like just open it like a zombie. Where's the joy in that is what I want to say. Anyway,
Totally.
soapbox. I'm off the soapbox. Rant completed. Thanks for letting me open up, Jeremy.
No problem at all. There's a lot of really good points there. Like there are a few kind of durable Magic experiences, like, and I think you've alluded to this before as well, that we really straddle the line between limited and constructed, where it's all the great things we love about limited, which is even footing. You're all opening the same product. There's the the fun variants of what you open, which sometimes gets a little too fun with some of our play boosters, but it seems to be kind of leveling out there. But then the joy of constructed, of like getting to like you start on the base and you build onto it, you tweak it, you evolve it. Something you don't usually get to do in limited. Like your premier draft on Arena, you don't get to. Maybe you change a few cards after you play a couple of rounds and like, wow, I shouldn't be playing with that card. But it's so minor, and it really is this disposable experience. And then you add to that some of the stuff I was saying about Arena before, where it feels like this anonymous slot machine, where at least for me, like the getting to the point where like you go on a bad run and you just like don't want to play Magic anymore because like you don't remember the wins as much as you remember the losses. Like you get in a bad headspace. Like I feel like that's so much worse than Arena versus this durable league experience that you've built, where you do get to have the community, you do get to have the longer tournament experience that is just you don't really have anywhere else these days, other than maybe Grand Prix are the closest, but that you require this big chunk of time. It's a lot of fun, but it's a weekend, and so I think there's a lot of really good points you made.
Yeah, there's the tinkering and the evolving of the decks. That's its own kind of joy. I think it's a bit like, I don't know, for people who are really into it, you can rebuild the same pool like 10 times along all the color pairs. If you can put as much or as little time into it as you want, right? As much time as you have available. So I think that's interesting too, right? The kind of like flexibility that you have in terms of like when you play your matches, in terms of how much time you spend prepping for those matches and making your sealed pool the best it can be. Like that's something that you don't, I think, as you pointed out, you don't get that in other tournaments. Like it's not like, hey, between rounds of draft, just take a few hours, build out all 10 variants, and then we'll all still be waiting here. You can come back and finish the draft, no problem. But we got the power to do that. So I think that's we provide a set of goods. I think that, again, not to shine our own chrome or toot our own horn or blow our own whistle, but you don't get it anywhere else. And I think that as long as we keep providing this unique tournament experience, there's no reason why the community shouldn't keep growing, as evidenced by the recent record turnout for Modern Horizons 3, like 128 players. That's huge. Considering we hadn't broke 120 before, so that's a good sign, especially for summer league, right? Summer leagues notably have a lower attendance, generally speaking. So pretty happy with the way things turned out. I called 140. I called 140. I was wrong, but I think I was more right than some of the other guesses out there.
Yeah, and it was a little slow starting, I thought too, the growth, but it sure accelerated there. So I love it. And it's going to be a tough one to top 8 for sure. I saw some of that discussion going on.
Oh God, yeah. I'm sure that discussion's going on both on the server and outside the server. In terms though of more recent events, like you and I, we just witnessed, I believe, most of the Outlaws of Thunder Junction Mega Draft finals. That was a nail biter. That was exciting.
It was. Yeah. It's always one of the best finishes there. And I know, there's some other discussions about, hey, mega drafts and asynchronous, but it definitely, it's something to keep in mind that just the spectacle of kind of bringing the server together to watch this, like, World Series, Stanley Cup Finals, whatever of our format all together is that's a big boon that we'd have to work hard if we were to ever try anything else to, like, well, if we're giving that up, we'd have to be gaining a whole lot more. So
yeah, I think that's a good point. I think people are quite cavalier in some of their suggestions that we change these institutions, but the institutions are there because they serve a function, right? And I think that you're correct to point out that this is a moment where the community draws together, and you could play the entire tournament and be siloed off. If you decided not to use the chat function and say hi to other players, you could be siloed from everybody else until the mega draft. That could be your first point of contact with anybody else in the tournament, and I think that's important still. How do you get to know people otherwise?
Exactly, and it really builds, personalities, and like, oh, did you see that play that Evan made, or or what have you? It builds up the storylines. It does a lot for the community, and hopefully, like, even for somebody who's new who watches the mega draft, maybe even somebody who just joined an MH3 and didn't play an OTJ and watches that, like, oh man, this makes me want to play on stream more because this seems awesome. I want to build towards that sort of thing where I'm the celebrity the next time around.
Like with the various media offerings, the content that we're producing these days, I think we're doing more to player build than Wizards is. I think, like, I'm more and this isn't just because I'm the TO, but when I watch the mega draft, I am way more into the play than I am when I watch the Pro Tour or other events that they put on and put out on YouTube. I'm like, I don't know these people. I don't care. Like, they destroyed the pro player system, which, that's part of the reason that I was such a grinder, right? It encouraged me to do as well as I could, and to push higher and further than I thought was possible. But now that that's no longer an option, now that they've taken that carrot out of the equation, there's no real reason, there's no implicit reason that any of us should care about the Pro Tour. I think they've made the path so unclear. Yeah. It's no longer a reason to be invested. Whereas I think, with a community our size, it doesn't take very long to get to know the players and to become invested in their progress and in their struggles. I just care way more about the content, for example, that Richard and John put out than anything that Wizards of the Coast does these days.
I totally agree, and it's a bit sad of kind of what's happened there, and I sometimes stop to think, oh well, maybe it's just because I get to be an old curmudgeon, and I don't play paper as much anymore. But the vibes I read online and the feedback I read online is that it is confusing and that people don't feel as connected, and maybe Arena contributed its own little bit here where people aren't getting out to their local shop as much it's like, well, I could go to this, whatever it's called now, RC or RCQ, or Elemental P. But I could just play on Arena, and why bother? And maybe I'll play an Arena Open, but yeah, it's definitely muddled, and I worry it's, not to be Mr. Anti-Capitalist, but like that, Hasbro getting in there and having their finger in the pie and saying, well, how does this help our bottom line? How are we going to get better quarterly profits out of this? And if the answer is no, then just cut it, print more Commander decks. Anyway, it's a little bit sad to remember the old days versus now for Magic. So again, this is more a reason that I'm glad to have found this community, because you do get to know the celebrities and the big names here, and and everybody's so great. Like, we don't really have villains. We have maybe occasional faux villains, but it's a great group of people.
I want to then ask you a question which is related, but is also a bit left field. And if you can't answer it, that's fine, but I'm going to give it as a task to our listeners as well, because they might have their own answer to it, which is different than yours. You know how they have that meme online, the whatever iceberg, right? And then
I'm not sure. Yeah, I think so.
Then you have for example, if you had the MTG iceberg, the top levels would be like the latest set and draft boost or play boosters. And you go further down, it's like Throat Wolf, and then you go down and further down, it's like Garfield's Journey to the Falls, where he discovers the principles of magic or whatever. So my challenging question to you and anybody else listening out there is, if we had an Arena Gauntlet League iceberg. What would the levels be? Let's say you had to put 4 levels minimum in there. What would be the top level that everybody knows about? And what would be the sort of descending levels that fewer and fewer people know about?
It's interesting. I mean, the first level seemed like that kind of the base rule set.
Right.
60 card sealed and punishment packs and, cut to a mega draft. And then maybe a little below that, some of the more known things, but maybe not everyone knows still, because I can imagine there's people who consume this community and don't really delve into the various channels. So maybe people don't know that there are feature matches, even though it's pretty obvious, but maybe not everybody knows, or like how to be part of it. So the feature matches and the various ancillary content, like John's podcast, this podcast, would be maybe like a level 2, and I got to dig for like the lower level stuff. It's like, Cody's secret server is like level 3 or something, even though it's not, it's not super well hidden, but it is hidden. It's not right there on the surface.
Yeah, and I bet you there are new players that are already scratching their head like, what?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So we're getting more arcane. Okay, the bottom level of the Arena Gauntlet League iceberg.
The most arcane. Oh, that's a good one. I mean, there's certainly lots of things going on in DMs that would have to be there, but I don't know that there's a theme to those. So that's the challenge.
I'll leave you to ponder it, and then if you come up with
what's our hidden Cthulhu or whatever, the surface.
If you come up with a concrete answer, just post the image in general chat, and I'm sure that I'll enjoy it, and other people will enjoy it too. So that's my leagues behind, do at home activity for everybody.
There you go.
Jeremy, we're rounding up on the close to the end of the podcast, or the vodcast. Do you have anything you want to add? Anything you want to scream from the top of your lungs to the world, for the world to hear?
I don't think so. I definitely love it here. I'll give myself one more shout out, which is the original namer of our format. I think I came up with Gauntlet League a couple of years back when we were debating a brand name, a brand change. So I'll give myself a little pat on the back for that one. I think that's a nice, concise way of summing up what is a new format. And it is a gauntlet. Even more and more these days, the MH3, good luck. I think it's you might be 9th with 21 points was what the model was saying. So yikes.
Yeah, I think it's good branding. I think it's the best suggestion that we had. So thanks, Jeremy. Amir, just before we did our vodcast for the second Leagues Behind, he was making fun of it. He's like, "Oh yeah, Arena Gauntlet League. Why don't you call it like arena fighting dual champion battle. He just kind of put out all these other words for fighting, and he's like, yeah, he's still taking the piss. So I don't know, I don't know what we got to do to make him happy, but he thinks that there's still some sort of unknown future brand that we're gonna use that's gonna be even more compelling.
You're going down, Amir. Pistols at dawn. Got to play more classic Gauntlet, the old video game, for what, maybe 2% of the server knows that reference.
But seriously though, I think that it's good because it encapsulates a couple of things, right? When you run a gauntlet, it's not something that you conclude in one moment, right? Like it's a series of events, which I think captures more or less what happens week after week during one of our full-length tournament offerings. And
Yep.
also, I think when you go through an entire gauntlet, I think you come out the other end a changed person. You complete the hero's journey, right? So I think that that's also
Winnowing.
yeah. So there's a
Also.
there's a winnowing and there's a strengthening, and I think that that terminology kind of captures a lot of the intangible goods that we enjoy in this community. So I think it still fits, regardless of what the Amirs out there say. I'm certainly I can't think of a better name for what we do. So thanks again, Jeremy, for both naming this tournament series that we're enjoying and being my very special guest today. It's been fun reminiscing with you and talking about current tournaments, and really grateful that you could make the time for us today.
Thanks so much for having me, Chris. It's a pleasure. Been on lots of podcasts this week, so I feel like a celebrity.
You're an AGL celebrity. How's that sound?
Oh.
What was that old Wizards ad? They'll know your name. Well,
Right.
now they do.
LC Emeritus, podcast regular, etc.
All right, Jeremy. Thanks again. Have a great one. See you next time.
Bye.
Bye.